Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Terrain Studio. I'm your host, Sean Morris. On this Terrain Studio update, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an update on the hobby work that's been going on with the Hobbiton project, the Shire project. So as you guys know, I've been building a 6x4 table. I'm going to get into a video right after this, pre-recorded. I'll walk you through all of the foam conversation. So it's going to be a little bit of a foam knowledge video, if you will, just talking a little bit about both the design of the project and then some of the aspects that went into the design and why exactly I'm using the methods that I'm using to get the table laid out as it is. It's a little bit geometric in shape right now, but I do walk you through in the video as to exactly where we're going with the project. A bunch of foam work has been done. Almost all of the foam work, matter of fact, has been laid out for the groundwork. There's going to be a little bit of layering, and then we're going to get into the undulation. So again, foam cutting, sculpting foam, working with foam, how to hide seams, and then how to actually create a flow across a project. So that's going to be one of the things that I think it'll be new in this project that you guys may not have seen, and that's sort of that cutting in and undulating of foam across a tabletop. A lot of people are very used to seeing gaming tables that are flat, very, very flat, with modular pieces that go on to change the topography. This project's going to be unique in the fact that the foam itself, the whole base layer, is going to be one just topographical feature that's going to have a really nice flow, some switchbacks, some dips, some dives, some planing in some sections, as well as some water features and a few areas where we're going to show you how to transition very, very sharply over a short distance and space. And of course, we'll have some other elements that will be unique to the Shire itself. And again, also talking a little bit about scale and playing with that in terms of some features are going to be very much built to the scale of the miniatures, where other things are going to be built in the scale of sort of real life or to scale at that level. So that'll be a unique element of the project. So I'm going to jump into the video right now so you guys can see that. And then at the end of that, I'm going to come back and give you guys a little bit of a preview for some Patreon perks upcoming. And I'll tell you exactly how to get them. And they're going to be layered as such where if you're not interested in the perks, or if you're just here for additional content, etc., and that's not something you want to explore, there's going to be no additional cost for any of those. You can stay at the level that you are. If you're interested in the perks, you'll bump up or you'll go to the appropriate tier. But again, not going to change the level of pricing. Each individual patron, which I much appreciate, will get to determine as to how they want to be involved with those perks. So stay tuned at the end of the actual video clip for that, and I'll walk you through that. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Terrain Studio. I'm your host, Sean Morris. Today on the Terrain Studio, we're going to be having a look at the Hobbit project down here in the studio, having a little bit of an evolution here of the project, although it still looks a lot like the Minecraft project. So let me just walk you through kind of what's going on, and I'll talk to you about the evolution that we got to at this point, and then where we need to go from there. So as I said before, we're doing a 6x4 project here. We are doing it on 18 by 12 tiles. They are on 1.5 inch foam, and then we're going to have some additional foam toppers on top. So we did the 6-inch cuts by 18, glued 2 of those together to get the 12 by 18, nice and strong. We did the weight test on this. It'll hold over 8 pounds on the seam alone. We are going to find ways to strengthen this even more, and I'll talk a little bit about that in this update. But as you can see, we have sort of a loose schematic laid out here for what the project's going to look like. What you really need to be seeing at this stage is kind of the undulation of the topography here. So bag end is going to be up at the top side. It's even going to be higher. It's going to actually walk along that side. And then what we have is we have this sort of cascading into the middle, and we have that on both sides. And then what we have is sort of this stepwise fashion coming down on this edge, and then down on this edge as well. And what you really should see is that we have a flow that goes down to here, back to here, back to here, and then back to here. So if you're following that, bag end down, through the middle, cascading down through here. This is the party tree area. So there'll be some tents and things set up as there was for Bilbo's birthday. We'll have bag end up here. Each of these is sort of marking off where the Hobbit holes are going to go. And the reason that we have these sort of steep steps down is that's where we're actually going to sink the holes into. Now, it's not going to be as aggressive as it's shown here, but there is going to be some drop-offs, and it will kind of
sort of follow the drop that we have here. So obviously a drop like this is going to be more aggressive than a drop like this. A drop like this, slightly more aggressive than this. And then you can kind of see how that fashion goes. In some areas, we're going to use embankments and or the hobbit holes to sort of take up that space. So it's not going to be this like steep drop. It's going to be kind of a flow into the hobbit hole. And then we'll have some cascading hills that'll run around that. Like I said, we're going to build this up probably another 3 inches and then fall down through there, and I'll kind of give you that. Ignore that blanket. That is just tossed down for laundry. So through here, though, what we want to pay attention to is the topography as well as the roads. So you can see these lines are to mark off actually where the roads go. And then these trees are going to be large sculpted trees. There'll be way more trees than this. There'll be way more plants, but there's going to be a large, two trees here, sorry, crafted, a large tree here, and then of course up at Bag End, there will be one more. This is going to be kind of a hedgerow, sort of bocage, if you will, running down through here. Obviously, these are roads. Some of the hobbit holes are going to be more mounded up and then a small hole in, and then other ones are going to back onto the hillside. What I'm going to be doing next, and I will talk a little bit about the construction here, so let me just lift off this section here for you. So what I have done is I've just built boxes and I've just taped them together. So the boxes themselves, and the reason I did not secure this yet is because I need to do this in 2 stages. I need to glue the ends in so that they remain upright, and then I'll glue the sides in separately. And the reason that I want to do that is when you glue the foam together, if it has any memory left, it's going to start to sort of work against itself. So gluing the ends straight up and down won't actually flex the foam on the bottom. It's just going to literally glue straight up and down. Then putting the edges on, I'm going to pay attention to the glue that's going to be happening this way so that the sides will go in and they'll be straight up and down. If you glue the whole box down and it's not perfectly straight, you'll get some pulling in the corners or pulling against the edges. And when that happens, you can actually get some flexing of the foam on the bottom. We want to avoid that. So gluing it in stages, end and then sides, will help to avoid and take out some of that stress that'll be in the foam naturally. We're also going to put some struts in the middle, and that's just going to give some added support, specifically more support for the seam itself. Right now, we just have these paper toppers, and that's just to signify and give us the design so we can still see that. But what we'll actually be doing is, in many cases, putting multiple inches of foam on top. The reason that we want to do that is this becomes our carvable layer. Now up here on Bag End, we're going to build the wall up and then we're going to put in Bag End. It's going to have a room, a hallway, and another room. Then when we transition down to the next one, what we want to do is we want to build up the foam layer. So this is going to have probably about a 1/2 inch foam on top here, just to give us a little bit to carve into, specifically so that we can sort of craft in the roads. The goat paths and the trails for the carts are going to be carved in just a little bit to give a little bit of negative impression so that we can put on the gravel, and the gravel will still set at ground level while everything else will flow over it. If we just put the gravel down and the flocking, it's going to look a little artificial. We want to avoid that. So what we'll end up doing is, if I build this layer up, let's say a 1/2 inch, this next layer will match up perfectly to it. And then what we'll do is we'll carve in a slight undulation. This one here will have a layer that will go up to this. So in this case, we're actually going to build this up slightly higher because this one will be to here. So this one will have a few more inches of foam, and then we'll carve that one down. And then here, obviously, we have another drop. We're going to carve there. And then this one's going to curve down, and we're going to actually have the water feature here. Over here, where the drop is a little less drastic, we're not going to have as much foam because we're not going to carve in any hard edges. We're going to just have this sweeping, sort of low-key gradient as we go down through there. So each layer is going to determine what level of foam thickness that we're going to have. The top is going to start, fairly thin because we're not going to be carving a lot there. The 2 middle layers are going to have the most aggressive and thickest layers of foam so that we can really carve in and cut into those. And then obviously as we get to the front edge, we aren't going to need to include as much foam there. Just so you can see, the boxes are throughout the entire build. Each one of these has a box. This saves a lot on foam, and really there's no need to have excess foam through here because you're not going to be carving into this layer. every single one of these is going to get a 1/2 inch topper, and the 1/2 inch topper is actually going to act as a stop for me. So when I'm carving, when I'm cutting through the layers, when I notice I get into the 1/2 inch layer underneath whatever thickness is on top, that helps me to determine, okay, I only have another 1/2 inch of working material. I want to be careful with that. I'm not concerned about there being structural issues with that because each of these is going to have 2 struts across. So there'll be a lot of structural stability to this. And in addition, everything's going to be topped with a layer of Sculptamold, and that's going to really harden up and basically give it a hard shell that I'm not going to have any worry about anything pressing through or damaging that. So that it looks like there's pretty stark white, all simplistic, but there's a lot of structural work that goes into this and design, and this is stuff that you'd miss if I just showed you the end product. So I want to make sure that I don't skip this step. So when you're planning out your own tables, whether you're doing a tile design or whether you're just trying to figure out a solid design that have some undulation, this is a great approach to it because you can really start to get the flow of this. And if you make any mistakes or errors, you're really just replacing a single tile. You're not having to replace large sheets of foam. In fact, I will actually put all the foam on top of these and start to lay out loose markings for the gradients before I ever glue it onto the boxes themselves. The box will go down, the 1/2 inch foam will go on, and then all the carvable foam will actually not be solidified until I'm fully done, because I'm going to show you another trick when I get to that. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break the top foam into smaller sections so that when I'm cutting through, if I make an error, not only is it going to just be a single tile, it's actually going to be in thirds. And so I'm going to have a ton of ability to manipulate, change, and if I end up making a mistake, I can remove that piece of foam, replace it, and then start again, because I really have to make sure that the design and the flow of this is um, is aesthetically pleasing, because every element will be determined based on the ground structure. Okay, so that's a lot about that, but it's important that you get it. That's why I want to give you the behind the scenes stuff. Another couple things I want to show you. We have the plug and play system. So this is the lighting system I talk about. It's fantastic. It's just plug lighting system by Woodland Scenics. They did not send this. I purchased this, but it's fantastic. I've used it on several projects, and I want to talk you through this. This is a very basic setup. You can advance and make this as elaborate as possible. To see that, you guys can go back to the Coach Industries one. It's way more elaborate than this, but the same system and the premise exists. So what we're going to be doing with this is the power supply for the unit. Really simplistic. This goes into this. This is the light hub set. This is the main component of this. You can get rheostats, you can get expansion packs if you want to have more lights. We're only going to have a few on this, and they're going to be on bag end because we want to have that really be the focal point of this. But basically what you do is you plug your power into here. You have one auxiliary port, and then you can have up to 4 lights in here. Each of them has a rheostat, so you can control the brightness, or if you had blinking lights and or lights that were on a sequence, you can actually sequence those, or you can get a sequencer as well. That's another one. So this is the light hub. You can get the expansion as well as the sequencer. The auxiliary switch is great. This actually goes into the control mechanism, and that's just going to allow us, or the customer, to just flick a switch and turn them on and off if it's plugged in, instead of having to mess with the controls. The controls will actually be buried in the box. The switch will be on the outside, little toggle, and you're good to go. For this, what we have is 2 packs of the LED stick-on lights. This is the warm white. So there's 2 lights per pack, so we'll have 4 lights in bag end lighting up strategic points. And then for the outside doorway, we have the LED nano lights. These are super small. I don't think I can do this with one hand very well, so I might, oh, I got it open. That's good. Here is the lights for this. That is them right there. So that is the nano lights. They will form the outside lights for the project. Okay, let's shift over in the other part of the update, and that's just having a look at the gamer's grass that we have in here. I will tell you, there was a massive amount of packs there, and I'll pop a photo on the screen right now, and that's going to show you the printed, pre-colored 3D laser etch plants by Gamer's Grass. So have a look at those. Jace has actually got them all assembled. There's a massive amount of plants there. The photo might not do it justice. There is a ton of packs there. I think there's like 14 packs of the gamer's grass there. But for the project, believe it or not, this is the color palette. This is the number of packs that we have here. So running through the shrubbery, we have dark green, light green. These are the flower tufts. So we got some dark reds, blues, red, brighter reds, purples, yellows, and whites. Of course, the hobbit holes have a ton of plants and flowers, and we want to make them super bright and vibrant. So we get a bunch of packs of those. That's how they come right there. If you guys have not seen these before, you haven't watched a video of mine, but I talk about them a lot. These are great. Have a look at the consistency in there, and the density of the flowers is really, really nice. Over here, we have probably my favorite product, and it's not that old. It's the Tiny Tufts. Look how many you get on there. You do need to put these on with tweezers. They are amazingly small, but very, very interesting. Great for making path lines and or just in and around rocks, and also really, really great if you transition from the regular tufts, the 4 to 6 mil tufts, into sort of an open patch, or if you want to have sort of a feathering out of your grass tufts into sort of a flocking, that's a great item to use. So we get the light, the dark, and the I guess light green, and then the yellow. So it's more of a dry look. Down here we have the stock standard 4 and 6 mil tufts, and so we have these are the dry tufts, the swamp, the dark green, that is strong green, green, light green, and beige, kind of the dry look. And so again, this will be the main palette here with some elements to tie in. These are the dense tufts here, and so these ones are just really, really thick with the flocking. Same sort of thing. They're a little bit higher. I think they're about 12 mil, and they just have a nice bushy look. They almost look like hay in some places, so we use those to pack in and make some unique looks. These are spiky tufts. You guys have seen me use these before. Again, the wild look. They have a nice feathery top. Again, something else for variety. Down here we have light green 6 mil, beige 6 mil. So most of those are 4 mil there. We have the extra large light green. This is kind of a combination of the dense ones, but they're larger in size. So you can see the tufts are very, very big. Again, giving you that real tall grass look. This will be great down near the pond to give you kind of that reed-like appearance. And down here, we just have a mixture of little things, moss, dark moss, some mixed green 6 mil, some light brown, and then some dark green, and then kind of a strong green here. And these are a little bit more groomed, so they're a little bit lighter. So again, these will be nice on a path, but this will definitely be much more of a, like I said, a groomed path, a maintained path, versus some of these other tufts, which are a bit more wild in nature. This is the color that we'll be using for most of it. This is just the stock standard Woodland Scenics fine green grass, if you will. This will be mixed in, but as you guys know, I like to use a little bit of a color mix. So we'll be adding a little bit of the beige into this, otherwise known as a blended earth. And the blended earth is kind of almost this color here, and it does give a little nice shine. I actually don't use it to emulate dry grass. I actually put it on top of the green to give it a little bit of a sun sparkle. So that's on there. Another product I wanted to show you guys, and this is not I don't know what brand this is. Like, I've never seen this stuff, but this is kind of the replacement for the Woodland Scenics. It's basically called foam putty. But what you do with this is you apply it to, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to be using it for. Anywhere there's like a little crack or crevice like this, where that seam may or may not tighten up with the glue, I'll just put a little bit of the foam spackle in there. Once it dries, you can sand it, and then it's basically just like foam. It's actually a little bit harder. It's really, really nice. I also keep that on hand if during projects, working on them, if you ever sort of chip or dent a corner or there's any damage, when I'm done with it, I'll send it with the customer. You just go ahead and rebuild your corner, square it up with some tape, pack it in there, take the tape off. Once that's dried, it'll give you a new corner. Everything looks nice, sharp, and crisp. It's called foam filler. It's actually super expensive, 21 bucks for that container right there. But it's really, really good stuff. Again, spend the money where you have to, not where you want to for a purpose, not where you have to. But this stuff is really, really good. It's great to have in studio, especially if you're doing a ton of foam work. Okay, guys, that is literally the Hobbit project in a nutshell, where I'm at. Next stages for me, like I told you, get the boxes solidified. That's all been, they're all cut, ready to go. glue those down. It'll take probably 2 evenings. Like I said, I'll do all the ends, then I'll do all the sides, give it a day or so it takes any sort of memory or pull out of the foam. And what I mean by memory or pull, if you guys are not familiar or haven't seen me talk about that, when you look at a piece of foam, you can sometimes see in the foam itself that it will have a little bit of a bend. And because these come in like larger sheets, the bend can be a little bit more prominent. Let me show you this, for example. You can see this piece right here. Now, this was cut on the foam cutter, but you can see it's got a little deflection towards the edge. This just ended up being a little bit thinner here, and largely that has to do with the tongue and groove edge. But you can see there's varying depths and distances between my fingers. So if I'm here versus here, it's actually significantly different. And so when you go to lay that down, what will end up happening is if I were to put this on a corner and put it together, I might have a tendency to want to pull these two pieces together. I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna make that gap up because, well, really it's not because I have a miscut, it's because this is a bit thinner, so I'm gonna pull it in. It's not gonna be quite square. When you do that though, when I pull it in this way, it's actually pulling up on the bottom. And so when you do that, now you start to flex the corner of your foam, and then it starts to lift this way. Now, if you do that in this corner, and this corner is, let's say, a little bit more flush, what can end up happening is this corner comes up and this one stays solidified. Now suddenly you have a wobbly bottom. Now, can you get around that? Sure, you can sand and trim and do some things, but you want to make sure you pay attention to that. The way to get around that, even if I use a piece of foam like this, is to just glue that in. Don't worry about that. Let that solidify and dry so you have a square edge. You'll obviously want to butt up a T-square or a speed square and make sure it's straight up and down. Once that's done and once that's glued in, then I'll take my next piece. I'll set it down on here. I'll glue it in. I'll let it dry. And if there's a gap like this is square and that's square. If I pull this together, that's when I start to deflect the foam. Just leave it. If it's cosmetically not an issue, just leave it as is. If you're worried about the structure on top, you have that achieved. If you don't want to have that gap or there's an issue, that's where the foam filler comes in. You just run a bead up the side, run it up the top, let it dry, let it solidify. It makes up the gap. You're good to go. That's just one of the things that I've learned is that you can't just glue everything all at one time because it'll save you time. Because what it ends up happening is it gives you more headaches down the road. So just do your stuff slow. Same thing when I go to put the foam topper on top. One of the things you have to be careful with is if I glued a 1/2 inch foam just over the top of this, I'd put it on and it would have a tendency to want to flex a little bit just because if it's vaulted like this. So when I push it down and glue, what ends up happening is the middle comes up slightly and it puts pressure and pulls on every edge. Now, because this is one of the reasons that I used 1.5" foam on the bottom so that it's less likely to flex. If I had a 1/2 inch sheet on the top, that would flex that foam up. Now I have a vaulted floor and I have a tile that's probably wobbly. How do I get around that? Well, what I do is, these aren't the greatest things to put in, but if I could just use this as an example, I put in 2 struts across the middle. Now when I go to put that foam piece on, now it's glued here, 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 and in the middle. So now the ability, once it's pushed down, now the ability for it to pull up is less likely because it's pulling here and here and here and here, here, and here. There's an equal force. No longer is it just on the edges. That will really keep the reduction of your foam flex down. When you go to put a sheet of foam on, if you have a bow in it, be very cognizant of where you're putting it. I wouldn't put a big bow piece of foam on there. How do you get around that? Cut your big piece of foam with a bow into strips. That sometimes takes out the flex in your foam. Now you can glue it down in sections. Just pay attention. Does it matter if it's in sections? Is the seam an issue? If you're going to solidify the top with a unifying layer like Sculpt-A-Mold or flocking or that, it probably doesn't make any difference at all. So there's your foam tips and tricks this week on the Train Studio, obviously this month on the end video. I will be back in studio working next week, and then through the month of December, I have most of it off, starting from about I guess half of it off. And so I'll be in studio, so December should be pretty good. I am gonna do a live Q&A. I'm trying to make up some hours for folks who may not be able to schedule individually. So I'm gonna do some live Q&As through December. They're going to be for every tier, but I'm really encouraging anybody who's on those tiers to jump in. If you have questions, you're looking for tips, tricks, any of that, I will provide that information to you. So thanks for watching, guys. I will have a short clip at the end of this just talking specifically about Patreon perks. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be coming up right after this. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Hopefully you guys will enjoy the project coming up. Like I said, there's a lot of foam work. You can use foam work even if you're not building the Shire on many of your projects. Give foam a try, guys. If you're making your tables at home and you don't want to mess around with wood and wood structures and worried about storage or heavy items, try to go to the foam, see what you think about it. 1.5-inch foam is a really, really great thickness. You don't have to cut tiles this small. 2x2s or something like that will work great. You can bookend them, store them in between tables. They're not that difficult to store. I think you guys will be really, really happy with that. Just pay attention to the quality of the foam that you're getting. Make sure that you get the foam that you're looking for. Tongue and groove edges, remember when you're measuring, you're gonna have to cut off a little bit of that, so you will lose a little bit of foam there. So just pay attention to that. Blue or pink, it's not gonna matter. Some places it's even yellow. Just make sure that it's not toxic for you, because I don't want anybody to get sick. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.
All right, guys. So as promised, hopefully you enjoyed, first off, hopefully you enjoyed the video clip and walking through the Shire project. I'm excited to get rolling in that. December is going to be very, very busy. Not often do I get to have sort of 2.5 weeks of dedicated hobby time, but December is one of those months where I do. So if you're here, be prepared for an exciting month. As I said, I'm going to be doing some Q&As, some live shows as well, some live hobby builds, all Patreon exclusive this month. I'm not going to put anything out to the public at this time. I'll probably bring them back in as we move a little bit further down the track, but I do want to make sure that it's available for all of you guys. So on the topic of available to you guys, if you are at the tier 3, the $15 tier, the perks are going to be unlocked for you. The following perk, I should say, will be unlocked for you. So if you're a patron on the month of December, meaning you're watching this video today, right through the month, if you join at the level 3, you will be getting yourself one of the new exclusive Friday Night Fights Terrain Studio stickers. I have a bunch to give away. That is what they look like there. The photo's not that great in terms of you can't see the shininess, but they are holographic, very, very good quality stickers. I'm going to just throw that in, just a bonus perk. It's a sticker. It's not anything extra, but you're not paying anything extra for it either. So make sure if you're joining or if you're in, make sure I have your mailing address and you will get that. Now, I know you guys follow, some of you, I should say, follow the Friday Night Fights show as well as the podcast. You guys have been asking for some new designs. I've been working diligently on them, and I'm here to show you what's upcoming for 2023. Here they are. Let me get rid of that little sticker. It is gone. These are the new card sleeve designs as well as the new token activation tokens. If you guys have been following along, I have them actually in front of me right here. Let me grab the token. So this is the sample right there. You guys can somewhat see that back by my face. Great quality chips. Let me give a little riffle here next to the microphone, so you guys can hear that quality. It's really, really nice. So those are the designs that are upcoming. Those will be probably available early 2023, and then the card sleeves are going to be up after that. So if you guys are again interested in these are going to be available slightly different. I'm actually going to make a separate tier for both the tokens as well as the card sleeves. That way, if you guys are not interested or that's not your cup of tea, you guys can avoid that entirely. Stay where you are at whatever level you are. If you want to get them, that's great. I'm going to do the perks specifically like that. I'm going to create some additional hobby level perks as well. So I'm not ignoring any of the folks that are just pure hobbyist, but stay tuned for that. So I'm going to kind of cater to both. Again, these are just added things, just trying to, round out a little bit of what's happening on the studio level. Videos are first and foremost what I want to get into, and you guys have been liking the update videos, and so as I move through the updates, that's going to determine the sort of techniques. I think you guys are really going to want to pick up on how to do the shaping of the foam, so I will do a little bit of a how-to on that specifically. I am going to talk a little bit more about Sculptamold. If you guys have seen me work with that before, but if you haven't, I want to work with it a little bit so I can show you how to sync in features. So pre-planning in your Sculpt-A-Mold. You guys have seen me use Sculpt-A-Mold to sort of like top coat and top layer features, but I am going to talk a little bit about how to use that Sculpt-A-Mold to actually work it into your design. So it's a little bit of pre-planning, but I think in the post-plan, you guys will see exactly what I mean and why that's super important. So stay tuned for all of that. A busy month here, but again, thank you very much for being a part of this. If you're new, welcome. If you're an old hat, you've been here a while, welcome, and thank you. And if you're just popping in and out, that is okay, guys. I understand fundamentally, month to month, people's financial situations change. You guys are helping me out no matter where you're at, so I do appreciate that, and I do not take anything for granted. I hope to see you guys around for a long time, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Cheers.